It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into an episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, just you and I today. This feels a little bit off for the month of April, but here we are.
Here we are. It's good because we're bringing the audience in to ride shotgun on this one, so it'll be fun. Got a little spring cleaning. I've been traveling a lot, and finally got around to cleaning out my car. Found two more for the wall here. So
there we go. What are those from?
And this Penn State Pro Day, and this was Atlantic 10 basketball. So
the A10 basketball tournament that you covered. There we go.
I am actually in the process of renovating this space, so like everything on this wall is actually going to move to that wall, and I don't know. Sometime like this off season, the view behind me will change, but I think the credentials will stay. People seem to like them, so
yeah. I was just say it's been a staple, so I don't know how people will deal with that change, but
maybe we'll put them in a different order or something. I don't know. Change it up.
There we go. Something.
So it's been a week on social media for me. I feel like the mentions have been strange.
Just this week?
I mean, yeah, I feel like draft time is the time for the most bizarre of the takes. I feel like you have the most, like, look, it is really, really difficult to be well informed about the draft. Like Zach and I and Nick and Derek and people that like spend a lot of time doing this, spend thousands of hours watching, scouting. Nick and I and Derek have crossed the country. We've been to pro days and the Senior Bowl and the Combine and watching college football and talking to people and talking to prospects, talking to agents. And like from our side of the fence, from the not part of the team, like even if you do all that work, it's really hard to be like sure about stuff in the draft. Like, there's just it's like I try not to bring it up all the time, but I had a very good mock draft last year. It was one of the better ones in the country. I got 6 first-round picks, right? Like that's 6 out of 32. In school, that's failing miserably. Like in the mock draft business, that's really good. If you're the best general manager in the history of the league, you might hit on like 50% of your draft picks. So it is a time of uncertainty. And I think one of the things that we should think about the draft is that we should not be sure about things. Like the things that drive me nuts about the takes on social media this time of year, like people like, oh, there's no way this is happening. I'm like, man, like anything might happen. Like, and so on one hand, I think you have a lot of people who aren't very educated about what the subject matter is with like vastly overconfident takes. And on the other hand, like, I think there's a tendency from people like me that have done a lot of this work to maybe be like a little bit overly dismissive of some things that might be a little bit crazy. We have to acknowledge that we don't really know what is going to happen. And so like, I mean, like I was in an argument with somebody who was like, yeah, there's definitely starting tackles at the end of the 3rd round. I'm like, no, there are not. Like I'm pretty sure about that one. But there are crazy takes that are not that crazy. So I set out to find them through the gift of social media. And our audience has delivered. So we ask for wild Steelers draft takes and ideas. We're going to take your ideas. We're going to read them. And then we're going to decide how crazy they are. I used the ancient aliens guy meme. And I think that's where I think we're headed with this. So is it good crazy or is it bad crazy? That's what we want to know.
That's what we are trying to get to the bottom of. And it's going to be fun to look back on these after the draft.
Someone's going to be right. There is going to be one of these that right now, like someone has said, and it's going to come true. Before we get to, I guess we'll call it the main event. Do you want to cover the news of the day?
Yeah, sure. So a couple more visits today. It's that time of year. What are we up to? Like, I think 26 or something now of the 30 that we know, somewhere in that ballpark after the 2 today. But so we're winding down with finding out who the 30 are going to be that they're bringing in for pre-draft visits. But Tyler Guyton, the tackle out of Oklahoma, who we actually just talked about quite a bit yesterday with Nick on here, and then also Khristian Boyd, a defensive tackle that we've talked about a little bit when we had Derek on here talking about defensive tackle prospects. He came up. Alan, I know you're a big fan of his game.
Yeah, I like Khristian Boyd a lot out of Northern Iowa. A small school guy, didn't get invited to the combine. I think that was a big mistake. I like him in the 4th round. And he's a guy that's pretty consistently available for the Steelers there. If you look at like the sort of, consensus where he'll be picked, I really like him. Big guy, like really big guy. Not quite like Casey Hampton big, but kind of just like a big, he doesn't have that like pass rush upside that maybe you would think you would want for the position, but I love he doesn't get moved ever. Thought he had a good Shrine Bowl week. Nick was there, really liked him. Tyler Guyton, probably untalked enough about, just because it feels like that there probably will be a better tackle prospect available for the Steelers at pick number 20, whether that's Marius Mims, Troy Fatanu, JC Latham, someone like that. But I think he's a very realistic prospect, either at 20 if it's a particularly bad tackle board, or in a first-round trade back, which we've talked about a good bit. I did one of those today, put it on Twitter, and I kind of liked it. I traded back and took Guyton. I traded with the Bills, took Guyton at 28, and then I moved up to get Zach Frazier in the first round. I think in the second round, if you're trying to guarantee getting a center and also getting one of the top tackles, I think something like that starts to look really, pretty realistic. And I think he's certainly an option for them there if they're looking to trade back in the first round.
Yeah, I'm curious what the Tyler Guyton Pat Meyer marriage would look like, those two working together, because I love the footwork. I think it's really good, but like the hand placement is something that needs to be cleaned up. Somebody that's 6'7", he kind of falls into that trap that a lot of people at that height do with like the pad level concerns. So there's obviously some things to clean up. I'm not sure that he would see the field right away.
He's a bit of a project, and I don't know if he's a right tackle or a left tackle. He's a better pass blocker than a run blocker, I think, certainly.
Right.
And you played right tackle in college, but in front of a left-handed quarterback. And so, he was the blind side guy there at Oklahoma. And so I think he could be a left tackle, which maybe is not necessarily what the Steelers want if they're super sold on Broderick Jones being a left tackle, but
yeah,
I'm maybe less than super sold. So I don't know. I think if you draft Tyler Guyton, I think you leave him behind Dan Moore at left tackle this year and see if he can beat him out and go from there. But I think he's
973 RAS as well, so super athletic,
big and athletic. I think you'll like the physical tools a lot.
And what is Khristian Boyd's probably like 330, 6'2", 330, somewhere around there, I guess.
Yeah, so we don't have a combine, measurement, but we do have from the Shrine Bowl. And yeah, I want to say 6'4", 330. I'm sorry, 6'2", 320. 6'2", 320.
All right. Okay.
He's a big boy, man. He looks heavy, and I don't say that in a bad way. Like, as a defensive tackle, one of the best things you can say is that he doesn't go backwards, and I think that's really what his game's all about.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we'll see if either of these guys maybe come up as talking points for people as we go through some of these takes. Alan, anything else before we jump into those?
I don't think so. I'm ready. I'm excited about this. I think this is going to be fun.
Okay. Well, the first one I absolutely hate. Our guy Eddie P coming to us says in all caps, the Steelers are taking Joe Milton in a later round, and Zachary Smith can't do anything to stop it. He knows that I am not a Joe Milton guy. I understand the arm talent there, but I wasn't on board beforehand. And I certainly think after adding Kyle Allen that they aren't going to spend a draft pick on a quarterback. I think it's going to be a UDFA or like a Trace McSorley, somebody that's already been in the league or around in some capacity. I don't see them spending a draft pick on a quarterback. If they were to, I don't think it would be Joe Milton.
Joe Milton is the worst quarterback I think I've ever scouted in terms of his, like, the percentage of his talent that he's using. Like, he has a great arm.
Yeah.
It's beautiful. The ball goes very far. He has no idea where it's going, and his footwork's a disaster. I don't know. Maybe somebody could fix him. I'd take him on the practice squad. I don't know how you put him on the roster. I certainly wouldn't draft him. I do think he's a good athlete. Maybe you could use him as like a trick play merchant or a Taysom Hill, play some tight end or something. I think that could work. But I mean, I wouldn't. I don't hate the idea of having him around, but the Steelers don't have a throwaway draft pick. Like, even their sixth is not like at the end of the sixth round, and so I wouldn't be using one on Joe Milton.
It's funny because,
not crazy that it could happen, but I don't think it'll happen.
Yeah, I mean, if they didn't go out and get Kyle Allen as the third quarterback, I think they would have drafted a quarterback at some point, and I would have this a lot more likely. But I just don't think that they're going to spend a draft pick on a quarterback now, with that being the case. But it was funny to me at the combine where he's just, ripping it, throwing the ball 80 yards or something, and everybody is like acting like this is what we knew he was going to do. Nothing that he did that day surprised anybody. We already know that he could do this. Where's everything else?
10 straight targets would have been much more eye-popping.
Exactly. Scotty P says draft a trade for Ayuk or a similar level receiver that includes a 2024 third plus future picks, and then we don't draft a wide receiver on day 1 or 2.
I mean, sign me up if they're getting Ayuk for a 2024 third. I just don't know. Like, San Francisco's not going to make that trade. If they trade him, it's going to be for right now. It's going to be for a legitimate haul. Like, why would they give him away right now? They have him, contracted for this season. They have his rights. If things get real squirrely with contract negotiations later in the summer, maybe, but that's a long way away right now. I can't see them just giving him away.
Yeah. Well, it says and future picks. I don't know what that was.
A 2024 third and a 2025 first. Like, I don't think I would do that, but I mean, like, it's actually not okay. If that's the trade, like a 2024 third and maybe like a conditional 2025 first or second, depending on whether they re-sign him or how much he, something like that.
I was just saying, can the condition be based off what a player's contract is, like what he re-signs for? Can that be okay? Yes. Interesting.
So that's not crazy. If the return is like a 2024 third plus like a conditional first or second next year, like that's a return that the 49ers would trade Brandon Ayuk for at the draft.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of see the Steelers are kind of, I don't know, that they're kind of going for it, right? I mean, the Russell Wilson move is a now move. There's been a lot of the Patrick Queen move is a now move. That would be a now move. I mean, you're giving away future value, but I don't think it hurts you because you're only giving up the third this year. You still have the first 2 picks to kind of put the rest of the team together around him. I think that's, if you're looking at an Ayuk trade, the pitfall, if you're giving away one of those big picks, is like, what good does it have to have Brandon Ayuk if your quarterback has Dan Moore and Nate Herbig as 2 of his starting 5 offensive linemen? You're never gonna have time to get them the football. Like, you have to be able to build a well-rounded team. And I don't know that trading a high draft pick and throwing a lot of cap space at Ayuk right now does that. But if the bigger draft pick comes in the future, I can see it. I could see it.
Yeah, and I'm in the same boat. I'm in full agreement there.
All right, let's go. Let's go somewhere else here.
Yeah.
Let's go to Prinny, who is It's Buckin' Prinny, which I appreciate. If DeGene is available when the Steelers are up, they should take him first. If they aren't going to take a right tackle to allow Jones to move to his natural position, then get a solid cornerback to complement Joey Porter Jr. You have to. I honestly feel like you almost need to write out the JPJs now. Like, you can't just use JPJ. Yeah. I need to know which JPJ you're talking about. I mean, what do you think? I don't think it's crazy.
No, absolutely not. I think it's somewhat within the realm of possibility for sure. I mean, and I think Cooper DeJean, I don't know where you're at with him. I think he starts his career, especially if he's a Steeler, he's going to be in the nickel. Obviously you'd have Dante Jackson and Joey Porter Jr. on the outside, but you can do a lot of different things with him too. I mean, you can use him as a safety at times if that's what they wanted to do. Have Minka as a robber, still have two deep safeties, do a lot of different things with Cooper DeJean, but I think primarily they would be using him as a slot. So I guess then you're talking about, is it valuable enough to take that guy at pick 20 if that would be his role? But I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility.
I think it is, but I'm not sure the Steelers do. They haven't really valued the nickel corner, slot corner role that heavily. I think it's important, and I think he'd be really good at it. And I think
it's getting more important every single year.
And I think he could move to outside corner eventually. Like, I think that's you have Dante Jackson for 1 year. You draft Cooper DeJean, you play him in the slot this year, you move him to outside next year. Or maybe Corey Trice or Darius Rush steps up and you give those guys this year to say, hey, this is your opportunity to keep DeJean inside if you want to grab hold of a role. I think it's a good plan. Not crazy. Not crazy. I'm not sure it's what's going to happen. I wouldn't say likely, but it's not crazy.
Yeah, I'm also not crazy. Steelers trade 20 and 51 in next year's 3 to Chicago for pick 9 to draft Rome Odunze. I would say this one's borderline getting there for crazy. 20 and 51, which means, you're not going to have a pick after. Obviously, get Rome Odunze, which is great. You cross off that wide receiver position, but then you're not picking until 84, or you're going to have to move up and give up even more capital to get a center. Certainly not getting a tackle. Where's the corner coming from? So I'd say this is, borderline on the crazy for me, even though I do love Rome Odunze.
I don't. First of all, I am skeptical that Rome Odunze is there at 9. Personally, I think he's going to go in the top.
Do you think he's going to go
7?
Do you still think Neighbors goes above him with all this talk now about Malik Neighbors with the gun thing on Bourbon Street or whatever? And
probably. Yeah. I mean, look, I thought Neighbors was maybe in the conversation for passing Marvin Harrison. So I still think I'd have him as the third wide receiver, but I think it's very possible that we have nothing but quarterbacks and wide receivers in the first 7 picks. Like I think that could very well happen. And so I don't think Rome Odunze is there at 9. So I think that's starting down this road. If Rome Odunze is there at 9, isn't that like a top tier outcome for the Chicago Bears? Like, who would they want more to fall to them at 9? Like, they might be trading up to get him. I don't see.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think somebody has to trade 2-8 to get Rome Odunze to stop him from getting to Chicago. If Atlanta's willing to do that.
If he's there, they're never trading this pick. Also, I think the Bears are probably just done trading with the Pittsburgh Steelers at this point. So I think the crazier part is everything that would have to happen to give the Steelers the opportunity to do this. Not that I think they would hesitate. I mean, that's a lot too. This one's crazy, man. This one's I can't get there.
It's gotten more crazy.
There's too much that would have to happen that I don't think can happen. Sorry, Mark. I think this one's too crazy.
There we go. Sorry, Mark. Okay, first, Smitty in the name here. So C. Smitty says trade down however many spots to get an extra second and trade 51, 98, and new second to get another first and snag 2 first-round talents at tackle, center, corner, wide receiver. Okay, so there's a lot going on here.
So basically, we talked about the kind of double barrel first and second round pick trade where you trade back in the first and trade up in the second. This is taking it another level, right? You're trading also one of the thirds to now get 2 firsts. Not crazy. I don't know why they would not crazy. I think not crazy. I think this is like if you trade back and take Tyler Guyton at 28, like I did with the Bills, and then you can use the extra second you get and the 51 and 98 to go back up and get like Graham Barton at 32. Heck yeah, do that. Why not?
Yeah, I agree. It's not crazy, but it's crazy trying to figure out exactly at least to me, going through that, reading that, what he was saying was the situation that was happening.
So
Like,
Smitty might be crazy, but this idea is
yeah,
not. Is that where
no,
you're at here? I think
that's
this
where we're
is
at.
very unlikely because of the number of moving parts, but none
Right,
of them gives me like, oh, that can't happen levels of pause.
No, this is actually probably what would happen if Monty Osenfort, the GM of the Cardinals, was the GM of the Steelers. Like the way that guy
I
goes
think
up and
look,
down.
I don't think Omar is far. I think we're going to see a lot of trades.
I would be curious. Yeah, I would be curious to see, and I don't want it to ever happen, but I would be curious to see what would happen if Omar was running a draft where he was picking in the top 5. Like we've
I think
seen
there might
with
be
the
like
Cardinals.
7 trades if that was. It's so
Yeah.
much easier to trade at the top of the draft ahead of time.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. All right, I'll take the next one here.
Okay.
Trade up with the Raiders to draft Olu Fashanu if he's there.
Ooh. I mean, it's not crazy. Obviously, we have the need to tackle. Olu Fashanu being there a little, maybe like even a couple weeks ago, I would have said is somewhat crazy, but it doesn't sound like that's the case anymore. Like there's a chance that he slides a little bit for the reason that you mentioned. Number one, it's going to be a lot of quarterbacks and wide receivers up top. Joe Alt is pretty much the consensus number 1 tackle. If you can get, Brock Bowers in there, some defensive players, I think it's within the realm of possibility that we do see him slide into the early teens. So
I think Fashanu at 13 might be where he ends up being drafted, honestly.
And before I would have thought like the floor would have been like 10-ish to the Jets, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. I've seen a lot of 13 to the Raiders or 14 to the Saints for Fashanu recently. I don't think it's crazy.
His current NFL mock draft database average actually has him at 14 to the Saints. That part's not crazy. What about the Steelers trading up for him, though? I think it all depends on how you feel about Broderick Jones. If you think Broderick Jones is definitely a left tackle, I don't see the value in trading up to get Fashanu. But he is the one guy here that I feel like is a left tackle type.
Can I ask why? Because I don't think that you feel this way, but maybe you have a grasp on why people feel this way. Why is there this idea that Broderick has to play left tackle? Like, I don't understand. As somebody that was already a better run blocker than a pass blocker, if you get a better pass blocker than run blocker as the other tackle, why wouldn't Broderick be the right tackle? Why is there this idea that he has to play on the left side?
I think there's this fear from some people by saw what happened to like Kevin Dotson and just think that he's not going to be as good as he could be on the left side, on the right side. But look, like every right tackle alive played left tackle first at some level and then moved to right tackle when they were no longer the best offensive lineman on their team. Like every lineman in existence, unless maybe, I don't know, somebody went to IMG and then Alabama and was just the second, I don't know, maybe it's almost everybody at some point was the best lineman on their team and played left tackle and then had to move off left tackle when they were no longer the best lineman on their team. I don't think it's a big deal if Broderick Jones is a right tackle. This is a move that hundreds and thousands of guys have made. I don't think it's a big deal at all. And like you said, he's a better run blocker than a pass blocker. So if you get Olu Fashanu, I think it's a good get. I'm just not sure in a very tackle heavy late part of the first round whether there's value in making that trade. What's it going to cost to get from 20 to 13? And do I want Olu Fashanu that much more than I want Amarius Mims or Troy Fatano or JC Latham? I'm not sure.
My take on it, honestly, and this is I feel like this is a little bit of a hot take. If I put that out there, I'm not sure what the reception would be like. If Mims had more than 8 starts, just because of how good the tape was, he would be my OT2 over Fashanu.
If Mims had 20 starts that looked like the 8 starts he had, he would be the number 1 offensive lineman on the board, and he would be beating down those 7 wide receivers and quarterbacks to get into the top part of this draft.
Okay, so maybe my
his tape is that good. His tape is that good. And it's again, and 6 of those games are against good competition. If he had 20 games that good, if he played 2 seasons and stayed healthy and was that good, it'd be a top 10 lock and maybe a top 5 pick. Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. Okay. I want to get to one that I do feel like is a little bit crazy here. Actually, not a little bit. Very crazy here. KG says Steelers give the Chargers 2 firsts, 3 2s, and 3 3s, plus Justin Fields for Justin Herbert.
KG, you understood the assignment. I'll say that. We asked for crazy. We got crazy.
Yeah.
This is crazy. Why would the Chargers do this?
Chargers, $130 million dead cap. Getting a lot of draft picks, but $130 million dead cap.
It's not enough.
No. Yeah, the quantity of there's a lot of picks, but only 2 firsts. 3
It's
2s
not
and 3
enough.
well.
It's not enough. First of all, second of all, the Steelers aren't going to do that. I mean, this is not a team that is a quarterback away. They're not even close to that. They have a half a dozen positions that need addressed. They can't go trading 9 picks for.
Let me ask you this, just to make this more of a conversation and not necessarily for the Steelers. Is there a team that obviously the Chargers aren't going to trade Justin Herbert, but if they were to, is there a team that would give that up, you think, for Justin Herbert?
The big down, like I could see the Raiders doing it, but they're not going to trade him in the division, right?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe the Saints, but they're in like cap.
They always are
problems, and like I don't know. Not really. No, I mean,
it's
the Raiders would be the team that I could see doing that, but I don't see the Chargers trading within the division.
No. But I appreciate the fact that we got at least one on here that was like
crazy. Super... We got it.
Yeah.
KG.
Most of these were mild.
KG knew it. Yeah, there were not as much crazy as I expected. Here's an interesting one from Diogenes. All right. No matter who the Steelers draft, he won't start until week 12.
Ooh.
This
like
is
any draft pick or for sure number 20?
He just said any.
Okay.
This one, honestly, this might be the craziest one because who is going to play if not draft picks? I wrote a big story at the site today, SteelersNow.com, about how unlikely it is that all of the Steelers' needs are going to be able to be filled by their draft picks, that they're not going to get 4 starters and 4 picks in the top 100. And here's someone saying none of them are going to start at all. Who starts? Who starts at wide receiver? Is George Pickens, Quez Watkins?
Hold on, I'm getting a call.
Going to be the starting wide receivers? You're in at center, I think, clearly. I mean, there's nobody else.
Omar's no problem. Yeah, just send the paperwork over. All right, thanks. Yeah, that was Omar right there. I'm playing center.
Yeah.
In this case, it's not until week 12. I mean, yeah, we've talked about on here. Not only do they need to take certain positions in this draft, they need to hit on these picks. Like, I cannot imagine a world.
They need to hit on these picks and have them be good in, like, that's like, there was one when I looked at the like, there's some guys that are like, I think Kalen Saunders was like a defensive tackle for the Chiefs and didn't really pan out and went to Jacksonville last year and finally started. And it's like, he started in his 5th year. You can't even have that. Like, you can't even have a guy who takes a long time to get to being good. Like, they've got to be good right now. It's a crazy ask. No, this might be more crazy than Justin Herbert. No, it's not more crazy than Justin Herbert, but it's
not more. Yeah, it's also very much out of the realm of possibility. Like, they're going to start players from this rookie class early in week 12.
Someone starting in week 1.
Yes.
I'll put that one down. Someone starting in week 1.
I'll second that. Stephen Haygarth says bringing Michael Penix in for a pre-draft visit is all a ploy to make a team before them, the Raiders, select him and allow Tylise Fuanga a fall closer to 20.
Did they actually bring him in for a visit, or was it just reported that they were going to? I don't recall.
I don't think he's actually been here.
Yeah. It would not surprise me if that does not happen. That happens every year where there'll be a visit that gets reported early and then they just never come. A smokescreen visit? Probably not. I think if they bring Michael Penix in, it's because they have some level of legitimate interest.
Probably
in him.
Scheduled before all the quarterback activity that's gone.
Right. Yeah. I mean, before they signed Kyle Allen, absolutely, Michael Penix would have been I mean, not that like Kyle Allen should block you from drafting Michael Penix. They haven't talked to any of the other quarterbacks. That's what makes that one not make any sense, right? If you're going to bring in Penix, why wouldn't you bring in Travis and Rattler and all the rest of them, right? Like, why would you bring in one? It doesn't make any sense.
Or at least like Bo Nix, who's probably going a similar range, like
Bo
as
Nix,
him,
right?
Yeah. So I don't know.
Oh, there was Darian Summers also is on the Michael Penix train. I don't think he's very good. I think drafting him would be someone is going to draft him and feel badly about it later.
I think he's going to go before the Steelers pick at 20 in the first round.
I think you could be correct. When I'm starting to put together my first round mock, and he's like the biggest possible wild card because like he could go at 12 or the third round, and I don't really think that would be particularly surprised by either of those. It's going to be really hard to figure out where he fits.
Yeah, I mean, with a guy like him,
so
I wonder how
we've had hotter takes than the audience has had. Like
that is true.
Some of these are just not that crazy. Like,
hey, I mean, I threw one out there. I think it was when Derek was on here, either late last week or early this. Everything runs together now. When I said Ricky Pearsall was my wide receiver 6, that might be hotter than most of the stuff that's been said by our viewers.
Too.
Yeah,
I think so too. All right, here's one: atrocious penguin. Apparently, this is a member of the power play.
We don't need the atrocious penguin tonight.
Steelers trade Najee Harris during the draft.
Oh, yeah, I saw this one.
Okay, now look, this is crazy because I don't think there's any way the Steelers are going to do it. But it's like if you just look at it objectively and sort of ignore the team and their history and their tendencies, it's not crazy, right?
Like, no, like should they be open to it happening? Like, I would say yeah. I don't think it's going to happen, but like,
what do you think they could get for
him?
Like, we have not seen a running back trade. There's no comp, right? Like, what's the most recent running back trade like that? I don't know. I don't know what they could get for him. Listen, if I'm Omar Khan and my phone rings on draft night and the other says, "Hey man, I really need to get Najee Harris from you. What's it going to take?" The answer is not go away. No, the answer is hang on, let me look. Right? Like, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, and maybe it is somewhat more in the realm of possibility with Omar as it would have been with Kevin.
Yeah, I think, look, they haven't committed to his 5th year yet. They're probably not going to till the deadline. I think this one is very unlikely, but it is like the thought process here is not crazy. I really like Jaylen Warren. I think Jaylen Warren is a better fit for Arthur Smith's scheme than Najee Harris is. I mean, they brought in Cordero Patterson, so they're not totally bereft of depth at the position. They can go draft another running back if they get, a decent pick for Najee Harris. It could help their crunch at the top positions. And then you go into the third day and you go, fishing with Isaac Guerrero or Dylan Johnson or Dylan Laube or, Rashid Ali, one of these guys and see what you can get. I don't know. Yeah. I don't think it's not likely, but it's not totally crazy.
No, I'm in agreement there. And it's also like, I'm looking here. I found an article that has like recent or like a look at NFL trades involving running backs over the years, like somewhat bigger names just to try to get an idea, but like none of them are even like comparable, right? Like you got Khristian McCaffrey, and this is when the Jonathan Taylor talks were going on last year because we weren't sure what was going to go on there. This is like Khristian McCaffrey. Obviously, Najee's not within that. LaShawn McCoy was traded straight up for Kiko Alonso. Trent Richardson got the Browns a 1st-round pick. I mean, like none of these are even able to put on the same like parallel as what a Najee Harris return would be.
What was the Khristian McCaffrey trade?
It was Khristian McCaffrey for a 2023 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, and then a 5th in the fall in 2024.
This is not a very good running back class. And I don't know if there's a team out there that really needs a running back. The more I talk about this, the more I'm talking myself into it, or at least the idea of it making some sense.
I mean, yeah, I can't get there where I think it's going to happen, but I'm not 100% against the idea of listening.
100% agree.
There was I wanted to bring, because none of the defensive tackle ones we've talked about yet, so I was going to combine two ones here, because Jerome says the top two defensive tackles should be higher on a BPA board than people are saying, and then 20th Century Icon said they take a defensive lineman before they take a wide receiver, so that was a prediction.
And John Schmidt says that the pick at 20 will be a wide receiver or a defensive lineman. Three defensive line takes there involving the first round.
That was further down here, yeah.
I'm not a huge fan of the defensive lineman.
John McIntyre, D-line in first or second round. So, yeah, a lot of people were talking about down here. So
I'm not a huge fan of the defensive linemen that I think are likely to be available to the Steelers at 20. So I don't know, like, what. I don't think it's like navigating the board very well. Like, they need a defensive tackle. There's no question about that. Sure. I'm just not sure that I think there's, like, you try to, when you're building the board, you try to, like, navigate towards clusters of talent, right? Like, oh, there's a lot of tackles so that are first round grades, and not every team needs a tackle. So you're going to pick a guy at 20 that in most drafts you would not get at 20, right? Like, most years, Amarius Mims is like 15 or 13, some 12. Like, Broderick Jones last year was 14, right? And so you try to use those clusters because that pushes people down, because there are just teams in the middle there that just don't have a need. And there is not one of those at defensive line at all. In fact, it's a really fairly poor defensive line class in the first round. I like the defensive linemen later in this draft better. I think the second round and the day two guys, the guys like Braden Fiske and Chris Jenkins and Tavondre Sweat and Mason Smith, and we talked about Khristian Boyd, and I think I like those guys better than I like the fit or just the value of defensive line at 20.
So we're talking about Johnny Newton or Byron Murphy, basically, right? I mean, those would be the two that
those are kind of the only two, right? That are, I mean, really talked about in that realm. I mean, yeah.
And I agree then. I mean, I don't think that I would take either of those guys at 20 over what is likely to be there, as opposed to just waiting until a little bit later on. I don't know where Braden Fisk is going to go, but I would rather have him wherever that's going to be. And then everybody else that we mentioned here, Khristian Boyd. I even really like Gabe Hall out of Baylor, potentially further down the board.
And Ruke or Horo from Clemson. Like, there's even like farther down, like there's guys.
I know Logan Lee has his fans out of Iowa.
I like Gabe Hall from Baylor a lot. Like, there's guys way down in this class that I think have interesting upside. So I don't like the idea of defensive line in the first round at all in this draft. I don't think it's crazy because it's good value generally, but I just think it's a bad read of the board. And so I'm leaning crazy here.
Well, and what I'll say to that is I think I can get on board depending on what it looks like in the second. Like, would you be on board with Braden Fisk in the second round?
Yeah.
So I think
it's Jenkins or Sweat. Like, I think any of those guys are acceptable second round picks to me.
Okay. Yeah, because some of those were mentioning first or second round. So I agree at 20. I doubt that there's a situation where I feel like that is the best available player for them to take.
I think if they are able to trade down somewhere in day one or two and pick up an extra pick, the extra pick is the defensive tackle. If they just stay with the 4 picks, I don't know how they end up using one on a D tackle. Maybe. Yeah. But and look, it's the least pressing of the needs. They have every D tackle back from last year except for Armon Watts, and they brought in Dean Lowry. Dean Lowry's not as good. Cam Hayward's a year older, closer to the end of his career. Certainly, it's a need, but it is the least pressing of their major needs. And we've talked a lot about how we just don't. There's just are not enough draft picks to hit them all. And so I feel like if one gets left behind, that's the one.
Yeah, not enough draft picks for now. We know Omar.
Like I said, like Jordan Jefferson, Gabe Hall, Khristian Boyd, probably there in the 4th round. Tyler Davis, Justin Ebiogbe.
Tyler Davis at Clemson was supposed to be like, and not to say that he had like a great collegiate career, especially after his freshman year, but he was supposed to be like the guy right after Brian Brzee. Like,
yeah.
So there's definitely pedigree there.
Yeah.
All right. Anything else? Covered a lot of bases today. I don't know if there was any more that kind of. I mean, I think that we got to most of them, unless some came in here as we were recording.
I think there were some still rolling in as we were recording. Face Leah says the Steelers will trade up twice, first in the 2nd and again in the 3rd. I can see the trade up in the 2nd because I have a hard time sitting there waiting at 51 to see if Zach Frazier falls and your whole draft is screwed or not. Trading up in the 3rd, I don't know what would be the impetus for that. Maybe a wide receiver falls, like maybe a guy like, trying to think of like someone that I think is possible
on the border of 2nd and 3rd. Malachi Corley, I would think, is probably.
I mean, yeah, maybe maybe one of like Pearsall, Wilson, or Leggett falls like out of the 2nd round, and then you want to trade up to the top of the 3rd to get him.
Yeah,
I could see that.
If Pearsall falls out of the 2nd round, I got that call from Omar about playing center, so I got his number now. I'm gonna be calling him on draft day, saying, "What are we doing?"
Well, they drafted Zach Frazier. That's what they're doing, I assume. But
yeah, that's true. But all right, I trading up twice. I think there's a better chance of trading down than trading up. I'm not saying it's crazy, but
it's not crazy. I don't think it's very likely. I agree.
Yeah. All right. Good stuff. Alan, tell the people
that was fun. A Saunders _PGH, PGH Steelers now, SteelersNow.com. Like I said, did a big thing about the history of their top 4 draft picks and how likely those players are, how good those players are likely to be this year. And the answer is not very good. I'm sorry to report. It's just the way it is. I mean, of the players that were taken in the last 5 years at pick number 20, the best of them in their rookie year was Kenny Pickett. That was the best one.
And like a month ago, one of the questions that we got was, is he the most recent, like, biggest bust in Steelers history?
Now, A.J. Brown was picked 51. So, I mean, you have that hope, I suppose.
There we go.
But,
you know what we should do? I think would be fun on here too, to just keep the audience involvement going. What I'd like to do sometime between now and the draft, so I don't know exactly when you want to do it, because I didn't bring it up. We're literally talking about it now. Is have people send us their mock drafts, and we give them a thumbs up or thumbs down,
or we can grade them like they like ESPN always grades the drafts like immediately after. That's what we should do. We should give them. We should give them. I like that. Let's do that next week. Tomorrow, Derek Bell. I want to talk about cornerbacks.
Yep, just the story just came out. Yesterday, I believe his corners were published on the site. So be sure to go check out the article, and then we'll talk about a lot of what's on the article, because I have some beef that I have to bring up to him within his rankings. So I'm going to do that tomorrow.
Beef is always good for views. We like the audience likes the beef.
Yes. So like, subscribe, hit that notification bell. Do not miss tomorrow's episode with Derek. Going to be on here. You can find me everywhere, Zachary Smith PGH. Also find the podcast everywhere if you're not watching on YouTube, Apple, Spotify, where we get that from. And if you are over there, leave us a 5-star review and subscribe over there as well. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in. Take another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.